You're filming it.
Yeah, I filmed yours as well.
Really? Yeah. Wow, I'm getting famous.
No, just cut out some stuff and then make it funny.
All these typos.
And like that's his talk. It's just basically typos.
Typos for TikTok.
You're gonna I hate JK.
I can just post on Twitter. Ruslan and I were talking about earlier, like he asked me when you were talking about the talk, like, do you have a Twitter? And I'm like, I'd rather not. And then I shared with him my Twitter. It literally has 5 posts. I have 3 followers. Yeah, active. But I can get active. I can post Ruslan's talk.
Yeah.
Or mine if I embarrass myself in the next few minutes. But hopefully that's not gonna happen. It shouldn't be that hard. I'm just gonna be telling you guys a little bit about my story. My name is Bogdan. I'm a front-end engineer at JK Web since April. Okay, it's your company.
Nice.
Right.
Somebody feel me actually?
I'm also taking one. Yeah, and as I tell literally every soul I meet on this planet, I absolutely love PHP. Not really, but I'm not going to talk about PHP versus JavaScript or anything else. I'm here to basically just share my story a little bit and how I struggled to get into web development. I'll go over a little bit of my background and where I started, how I learned, and basically the lessons that came out from there, how I failed in order to succeed, English. And yeah, basically, let's just go through it step by step. I always loved computer science and technology. I was very passionate ever since I was young. And this basically helped me discover other fields as well. I was in the internet pretty early and I just started scraping manually, basically going everywhere. Oh, that's a link, that's interesting, let's see what's there. And just do the Wikipedia page mentality. I went to do a bachelor's degree and a master's degree as a systems engineer. I didn't like it. It was a lot of low-level stuff and embedded systems and hardware, and although it was interesting to be in the lectures, it was not interesting to work in for me. And so, like, the only relation that we had to web development was literally a semester of PHP, which hold on. Because the teacher said, if you do a project at home, you don't have to show up. So what do you think I did that evening? Did a project at home, presented it, and skipped the entire semester. So. But yeah, I decided to experiment with other things, mainly stuff like social volunteering, the arts, like dance, singing, and like all those other stuff which are good for youth. Then I decided to take a job as a technical writer, and I've been doing that I have done that, I'm still not used to it, for the past 8 years until this April. And for those who don't know what a tech writer is, because not everyone has encountered one before, we are quite rare in the wild because we reproduce quite rarely. There are, if you were to split 3 writers in IT, you would have marketing or content writers, you would have UX writers, and you would have technical writers. There's other flavors as well, but let's just resume to these 3. The marketing and the content writers, I'm sure you've met those before. They're the ones who write blogs or marketing pages or about me pages or stuff like that, basically. The UX writers are the ones who prepare like your button texts, your modal texts, your notifications and stuff like that. And tech writers are basically the ones that write the docs. The unsung heroes of large API references that you can see everywhere. But yeah, it's not just that. You also have video content and stuff like that. It really depends on the company. There's tech writers in pharmacy as well, but let's not go there. I worked in multiple types of companies, ranging from very small companies with few employees to startups and to big giants. Google was the last employer. I had to experiment a very, very large corporation. I was really curious. Its pluses and minuses. Spoiler alert. But yeah, okay, I'll just go through the journey and I'll split this into 4 phases, which is the beginning and how it all started, discovering the new web, which is, yeah, well, it just turned my life around. The learning process, how it went, and the lessons that I learned along the way. So I started going online around 2002. on 54K dial-up. I'm sure many of you remember. Back when websites used to look like this. Which were just a collection of links and tables, and basically whoever had the nicest table or the seamless table integration had the best website, right? And so I learned a little bit about the web in 7th grade from a teacher who was really cool and decided to teach us web development without any wizardries, that is a mouse. And so we did Notepad and the Internet Explorer, and we created like basic, smooth, created like basic HTML, CSS, and with a little script tag there. But yeah, nothing more than that. And back then, when you were learning to do a little web development, you would have to just try things, right? Because there were no 800 blog articles and 230 videos on YouTube and like all these communities that you can out, or meetups, or literally you just found a soul somewhere and you would become instantly in love because they were the only other person that you know. Nowadays, it's too easy to research yourself to death because the options out there are too many. And I really wanted to bring this up because most of us don't really think about this nowadays. We just kind of take it for granted because we're used to it, right? Every day you use your phone or you use the internet, and it's an extension of us as human beings, right? But this is a point that I'll come back to later on. By high school, I experimented a little bit with Microsoft Front Page, Macromedia Dreamweaver, and Flash with ActionScript. Anyone remember that? Boom!
Sure.
But the thing is that all these experiments were also what I just mentioned before. They were just trials. I was just trying stuff out. I didn't know if I was doing anything right, so they just stayed that way. There was no structured content, no anything. I think the most that I learned about web development in my trials was at some point setting up an Apache server, and literally as its name calls, it's a Apache server. And that was it. Like, I didn't do anything. And then there was jQuery, which at the time I really thought that was the same thing as JavaScript. But let's not get into that. I was kind of still stuck in this mentality with websites or tables with a more complex setup until I joined the startup in 2017. So I literally had no idea of what just happened. I heard about Node, but I had no idea. And then the startup had a platform as a service that was built with Node.js, TypeScript, React, Apollo, GraphQL. All these things were just, they were mind-blowing because I never heard of them before. And I started talking to my colleagues about it, and literally my mind was blown. And as opposed to the idea of the web that I had in mind with complicated server setups, sorry PHP, but that for me, that was the complicated part. And this new web that I was discovering was built around JavaScript, and JavaScript was used everywhere. And so for me, it was less intimidating that I could actually just learn one programming language, and I was mad that they didn't teach us in college. So around 2018, I got a friend to come over to my place and start, just fill in a little bit of the gaps that I had, and it basically started a process that got me here today. And we started from scratch with the basics of HTTP and how a client and the server communicate, and what is REST, SOAP, stuff like that, a little bit of CSS. And this time I would actually have to learn JavaScript. And then I would have to pick up React, which according to him is still just JavaScript. And do you guys remember this from the Watt talk at Destroy All Software? If you haven't seen it before, I highly recommend you do. As PHP developers, that would be pretty funny for you. So I did what anyone would probably do. I said, okay, I'm gonna start learning. So I took the bus and I went to the library and got myself some books. Of course not, it was 2017, we had it on our phones, and instead what I did was spend the next day or two watching videos, doing Udemy courses, and then deciding that I definitely know enough and I should start building the next Facebook. Of course, I only recapped the basics, but everything was great. I should just move on to React. And that went as well as you would expect. I managed to get things done, but I would hit random problems that I didn't know how to solve, and I would literally have to Google the error message, and out of context, I wouldn't understand shit, basically. And the answers wouldn't really help me. So I still believed it was better than paying for courses, but I just I just kept hitting my head against the wall and still didn't want to pay up. And so there's that. That's me literally right there. Anyway, I think we can all argue that the JavaScript ecosystem, probably why this is a big popular decision of people not doing JavaScript, but the ecosystem is so large that, especially for beginners, it can be pretty intimidating. They have no idea where to start or how all of these things are interconnected. What should I choose? I have no idea. And then there's decision freeze, right? So maybe my approach to learning wasn't really the best because yeah. And so as I kept on progressing, I would get into a new technology or a new framework or a new library, and I would just learn just enough to start working with it, and then I would get stuck in like the nitty-gritty details, and then I would start thinking about, am I making the right decision using this framework? Should I try another one? And so I kept doing that, and I basically kept banging my head against the wall. And this coupled with the fact that the JavaScript ecosystem is so large, it meant that I would never ever get to a satisfying level, right? And I really wanted to do this. And here's some complaints that you might have about JavaScript. Hey, why isn't it? It's supposed to be a GIF. Yeah, it doesn't work. Anyway, so for 2 years, from 2018 to 2020, I applied the T model, which is this basically, where you learn bits and pieces out of everything, and then you start developing on one thing, right? But I didn't really start developing on any one thing because I kept discovering new things. JavaScript, right? It's not PHP. So that wasn't deep enough. And then in 2020, I decided that, I'm gonna change my approach. Ooh, leftover. And so it was time to pivot. And I would no longer just try things, but I would go deeper into the nitty-gritty things and actually learn more about the things that I was trying. But all I ended up doing was literally just covering more layers. And so midway through the year, I made my wallet cry by buying the front-end web developer course on Udacity, hoping that structured learning would help. And it did. I learned more about JavaScript, CSS, and I found out what Webpack was because I kept hearing about it. And so, armed with this knowledge, I decided, okay, now it's time to restart learning React. And things started to get a bit better. When my code wouldn't work, I finally had an idea why it didn't work, so I could search for better errors. And throughout all of this, I became extremely passionate about it. I was discovering new stuff, and I was getting more of an understanding about why things are wrong or how things could work. And every time something finally worked, it wasn't as before that you just write some stuff and it works. It was, I made it work, right? So I became super excited, and I was like, I need a job because I'm gonna go fast at the new job. I'm gonna learn super fast, and everything is gonna be great, and I'm ready for it. And I'm pretty sure all of you have the similar experience. You search for a job in many different portals like Indeed or Glassdoor or God knows where, and then you find a job and you just click apply, and then you wait. And every second or third job, you write a cover letter, an entire page, perfect for that company, and you send that, and you repeat this process over time, and eventually you get no calls, right? Right? Well, yeah. So that went on for a couple of months. I kept applying like crazy. I would literally build paper airplanes and throw them out the window, and nothing would happen until I managed to get an interview with a local company, and I was excited as hell. So I went back to go deeper into all of these things. JavaScript, CSS, this company used React, so I had to go deeper into learning how React works, not just using it, but like how it works with its lifecycle, and Redux as well, which was really cool. And I also did a mock interview with a front-end architect friend, and he was like, well, you lack the experience, but you know your theory, good luck, man. And all I heard was basically this. And yeah, I decided that this is gonna be it. And unsurprisingly, after the last interview, I wasn't picked because literally your knowledge is too broad and not deep enough. The T model, remember, I didn't actually go down. So this just reiterates the problem that I had earlier with being so much to learn that it's impossible to learn the right things, and you can't get a job without learning, but you can't learn without a job. So, like, what do I do here? I'm not sure. So the next best thing I thought would be a portfolio. Luckily, I discovered Frontend Mentor and DevChallenges.io, which are two websites that give you designs, basically in Figma or other format mediums, and you just build the UIs for them. And then you post them on their platform, and other users can drop comments or give you feedback. And this was really cool, actually. This really helped, as opposed to all the other things that I did. Now I knew that I had to do that button, and I'm like, I have to position it in a certain way, and like this is prescribed, and I can look at other people that write this thing. So it was more structured, more guided. This really helped. And the thing is that self-taught devs don't really know what to implement. So this is why this works. You can't do tutorials endlessly because you just live in tutorial hell, which is a big problem we have nowadays. And whenever you do projects that start from your own ideas, well, you want to make them perfect, right? So you just kept spending time and you don't know what you're doing, and you're just going to end up spending more time. After a few months of building projects for my portfolio, I finally, I skipped those. Finally reached the point where I could try applying again, which brings me to today, where I'm happily employed at JK Web, where I like to say that we work with any front-end framework as long as it's Vue. I picked up things a lot quicker than I did with React, and I think this is, although Vue is an easier framework to get started with, I think the fact that I knew better JavaScript actually helped. And now I finally understand what my friend used to tell me, that React is just JavaScript, and so are Vue and other frameworks. And so, like, I would like to share some of the lessons that I got from this. Number one is, don't jump to code. Because as excited as beginners are trying to jump without any sort of backbone, you're just literally gonna melt and fall to the ground. Instead, you should cover the basics and then practice, reiterate the new concepts, rinse and repeat, and do this for, even if it's learning web in general or learning a new technology or a new framework or whatever. I think this is the way to go. And the question for us is, when do you know when to start a project with the knowledge that you have? And the problem is that you won't actually know that. That is why when starting out, you need guidance and structured learning. And because again, there's a shit ton of material out there, and arguably it's way too much material. So tutorials are probably not enough, but on the flip side, neither are entire repositories of knowledge where you're supposed to get lost yourself. So having you just basically need some guidance, either from mentors, or you just need to buy a course that covers very specific things and then just reiterate that. It may be a curse to have so much material, but it can also be a blessing, because as soon as you have an idea, you can pick out the right information and you can go deeper. And this is where I've had friends that are much more senior, and they tell me that the theory in certain areas I know better than them, which makes total sense because you don't use the theory on a day-to-day basis. You just know how it works, and it just works. You can't really explain it. So the thing here is that you might actually be it's just something for you to think about, because this can actually help you when someone comes in and makes this point, that you go back a little bit and think about, why you would forget this, why, I don't know. It's just something to think about. And in the end, it wasn't so much about the what specifically, like what I would learn. It was about the process itself and about practice. I remember that this has been a long process. I think about 6 months of really working on it, and it was 40-hour weeks and 10 to 20 hours per week learning, so no more free time, goodbye. And that's pretty much it for my lessons. And like nuggets that I would like to share is that maybe there's something that you can learn from this journey, or maybe it's something that you don't really think about anymore, but maybe it might add value to think about. Is that number one is that self-taught developers are passionate, because generally they start doing that by learning on themselves. Obviously you have to invest your free time into that as opposed to other hobbies. and they make them great assets to the team, which is great because you can give them low-level tasks that you don't like doing or possibly hate, and they are absolutely grateful for it. And this is also a chance for you to reflect back on how it all started for you and think about maybe what triggered the passion for you in the first place. I'm sure everyone was passionate at some point. And maybe, think about how those around you supported you and maybe what you could do differently to the juniors that you see in front of you. Yeah, and you probably know that saying, explain something to as if you're explaining it to a 5-year-old. Well, the thing is, it's a really good chance for you to reiterate what you already know, or even realize what it actually means, because you're using it almost like muscle memory. You don't think about it when you write it. Like you write your test now, you don't think about the fact that you're writing certain keywords, right? And when someone asks you, you need like a couple of seconds to think about the answer. And this is a great chance for you as well. So it's great to be in that situation where you can explain it. Right, and it works at all levels because I see myself doing that as well as a junior with my other junior colleagues. There are concepts that I explain because I've used, but I don't really know how to explain, and then I catch myself that, hey, I actually understand it now once I manage to do that. Another thing that is probably important is that that doesn't work. So the thing is that self-taught developers have a different learning journey than juniors. Juniors generally go for college, just fresh grads go for college, they have a structured curriculum, and then they come in with basically like a pre-planned layout and ready to plug into the company. They just need to build on it. Whereas self-taught developers didn't really know what to learn. So they come in with gaps, and they will look to you for a breath of fresh air to identify those gaps and potentially send them off learning. And they'll be super grateful for it because they didn't know what to learn before, and now everything they're learning seems to be useful, and it's so mind-blowing. I'd like to keep in mind one more thing, that self-taught developers are not, like people who change careers also are not just junior developers. They have various experiences. I think the Sarah just told the story before. They come from other fields or other, like even related roles, and they bring those packaged experience with them. And so there might be a chance to apply those things into the new job, even if it's a different role, or the role that you're doing, be open to that because it might spark some creativity that can actually help. Let me see that I don't actually fall behind here. For me, it was mostly about structuring, explaining concepts, and basically planning the projects and getting stakeholder buy-in and so on, which was literally my job, except it was revolving around documentation. And lastly, would like to suggest to involve juniors, no matter what, self-taught or fresh grads, into all aspects of application development. Could be writing, testing, reviewing code, release management, data analysis, UI, UX consultation, and so on. Because it's best to gain knowledge in all areas. Like with mentors and with support from the rest of the colleagues, it's much better to learn it all and navigate through that with help, rather than learning just one piece, then one day learning another piece and having someone else to explain how they connect to each other, and then you have to rewire how you think about it. So that makes it much easier for them to reach a middle position, basically, which is always great for everyone. And that's pretty much it. I hope I didn't sprint through it. Hope that was an okay pace. And if you have any questions, I'll happily take them for you. Woo! Yes.
How old are you?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm 32 and I started my first job when I was 24. Because until then I did volunteering and other stuff. I decided no workforce for me. And yeah. Could have been worse. If there's nothing else, maybe we'll grab a couple more beers and just chat for a little while.
Yeah, I got some more organizational stuff.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, let me share the screen first.
Oh, I'm out.
Yeah, just 5 minutes and then you're all free to go do crazy things. And
Yeah. First of all,